Ron Sowers. We're live. Well, not really live, but sort of live.
Kind of live.
Kind of live, sort of live. So, and you're in Casa del Jacobs. You're
All
the
right.
first person. You're actually the first person that's podcasted here. Well, it's not entirely true. There is a unaired podcast that occurred in my attic that will probably end up being B-roll. It's a super stupid story. So, one of my friends and I, who will remain nameless, but this may have come out by then. He's very into photo media, all that.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, listen, this would be a great place to do a podcast. Let's do an art, because my attic's just a big open room. He's like, I'll bring all this lighting. It'll be great. Well, I don't have any air conditioning up there. And when I first moved here, I had a bee problem. And so I was like, well, I think all the bees are dead. So I swept all the dead bees up. And we're recording, and it turned out there was one huge bee still up there. And so we're in the middle of recording, and this bee keeps swooping down. And so there's multiple parts of this podcast where I'm trying to kill a bee. Like, I am like freaking out. And then one of the very last shots, it flies down in front of the camera right at my face. And I just smack it right down. So technically, for what's being released purposes, you are the first inaugural podcast in my house. Congratulations.
Sweet. I appreciate it.
And you know what's funny? What I like to think about is how I first heard about someone or where I first met. Do you remember where we first met? I remember what we did. We did something together that's very intimate. I got you really. We played music together.
I was getting ready to ask you, was it a musical event that I was drumming somewhere?
Yes. See, I had only heard about you up to that point, through the Bearded Pup stuff. And then it was like, yeah, Ron Sowers from Bearded Pup is going to play drums. I was like, oh, okay, sweet. And that's the first place we met.
That's when I still had both of those going on.
Simultaneously?
Yeah, the playing music pretty much every weekend and making beard products.
Played music every weekend?
Yeah, we just about gigged every weekend at that
really?
time, yeah.
So now, did you grow up playing music?
No.
You just got into it later on?
I had a set of those wax paper drums when I was little and drove my parents crazy trying to duplicate Kiss Live.
Oh, at least you made a good call.
So
that's awesome.
So I had no formal training.
Yeah.
And pretty much still have no formal training. I learned how to play myself. Once we started getting booked regularly, I was already in too deep. I tried to get someone to help me, to teach me. I guess they said you're supposed to count, and I said, "What are you talking about? Count?" And they said everything's a 3-beat or a 4-beat count, and I said, "I have no idea what you're talking about."
That's perfect.
I said, "I just play," and they said, "What do you mean you just play?" I said, "I just play. Whatever we're playing, I just play it. I don't count anything."
That's amazing.
So that's how I ended up stuck. I had to stay that way because I didn't want to get hung somewhere between the two and not be able to play. We had youth events just about every weekend, so yeah, that's how
roped in.
Yeah.
Well, now, but you're not known in this area or around Ohio, even maybe the surrounding, heck, at this point, the whole U.S. as a drummer.
Oh no.
You're known as the Bearded Pup guy.
Yeah.
So explain a little bit. What is the Bearded Pup?
The Bearded Pup was born from. I've always had some kind of facial hair. Not since birth.
That's
but
powerful.
Goatee, chin strap, some kind of thing. I'd let a full beard grow in maybe for 3 or 4 weeks on a couple occasions. But in January 1st of 2015, I hadn't shaved for a couple days, and I thought, you know what, I'm just going to let this grow. It's winter, it's cold, and within a month, the same as anybody else in the world, I had itching, dry skin starting under my chin, and all that stuff going on. And instead of shaving, I tried to come up with a solution. So I looked around and found out there was such a thing as beard oil. So I ordered some from several places that I won't name, and it was horrible.
Oh.
I've always had sensitive skin. Can't change laundry detergents, that kind of stuff. Can't change
so
shampoos.
Like real sensitive.
Yeah, I mean, I'd break out or whatever. So some of it smelled so bad I wouldn't even try it. So I told my wife, I said, I can do better than this myself. And when I said that, I meant for myself. So I ordered in a few small bottles of stuff and, started blending a few recipes of different scents for just me, and would pass local buddies out, a little sample bottle here and there. And they'd be like, man, this stuff's great. You should do this. And I'm like, I work 50 hours a week as a machinist. I have 2 daughters. I don't have time to do this, as you guys are making a business of it, I guess. So within 3 months, we discovered that there was a huge need, seeing as that we couldn't find anything within an hour radius, that served this purpose. And remember, this was January of 2015. There wasn't a beard company on every corner like there is now.
Oh, yeah.
Or at least some of them think they're.
I mean, I don't know if you're able to remember back that far, but 2015, it wasn't like.
No.
You weren't like, every time, if you had ever looked at any kind of facial hair, anything on the internet, weren't getting bombarded by beard companies and beard brushes and beard balms and beard oils.
And there were plenty of beards then, but men's grooming was still evolving, I guess. I mean, guys were taking better care of themselves than they were 10 years before that, but it wasn't to where it is now in 2019 by any means. So in April of 15, we decided to go ahead and make a small business out of it. And I still just had maybe 5-6 cents of beard oil, no balm, no anything else. 1 shirt and I think 1 hat with a different patch on it, and that was pretty much it. But the first event that we actually went and set up at, the response was unbelievable. It was here in Jackson, and my sister went with me that day, and I looked at her and I said, I think this is really something that needs to move forward. So. So when we were trying to come up with a brand, me and my wife had a boxer, Roxy, that had to have been put down. We had her put down in early spring of 2013, and she had a brain tumor, was having seizures to the point where we couldn't justify letting her go through that any longer, even though it hurt us to put her down. So with that in my mind, when we were trying to come up with a logo, I told my wife if we could implement Roxy into our logo somehow, I think it would be cool. So we had a graphic design artist put a beard on Roxy, and so we had the image done. Then after about 3 or 4 tries, it's where it is now, and we still didn't have a name to go with it. Well, I'm a machinist in Chillicothe, have been for 21 years now.
Wow.
And my nickname, I got branded as soon as I went into the maintenance department there. I got branded Pup by some of the older millwrights.
Yeah.
They came into the shop I was training in, and the guy that was training me, his last name was Ross. And they said, look, Rossi's got a little pup. And it just stuck, whether you liked it or not. So about 2 weeks after we had the image done with the beard on Roxy, my wife said, why don't you just call it the Bearded Pup? She said, you've been pup at your job for 20 years. So it all just kind of...
I had no idea.
Comes full circle. I mean, people see the Bearded Pup and they assume actually that it's the dog on the logo.
Right.
I'm actually Pup, but it all kind of...
That's interesting. See, I had no idea.
Together. Yeah.
I had no idea that it had that much backstory. So you've been a machinist for 20-some years.
Yeah, since 98.
So did you go to school to be a machinist, or was that just something
No, I got hired at Mead Paper, what it originally was in Chillicothe, and of course we've changed names 5 or 6 times since then. But I went from production to maintenance, and once you go into the maintenance department over there, they put you in an apprenticeship program. So I was a machinist apprentice for 2 years, and then, which is hands-on over there. It's not really much schoolwork or book work.
Oh yeah,
but
they throw you out in the
yeah,
water, and then
yeah,
you got to figure out how to swim.
if you don't know what you're doing on a job, ask one of the older guys in there. It's pretty much the training. So
Well, so then, and we were talking about this before the podcast started. You're from here locally in Benton County.
yeah, I grew up in MacArthur.
So whenever you were growing up, I mean, what was like high school? What was kind of your interest as far as what you thought about going into? Is it just, get a job? Was it? Because it doesn't sound like it was like, hey, I'm going to be an entrepreneur and start a beard oil company.
No, I did not want to go to college.
Mm-hmm.
That was a fact. I pretty much hated school. Slid through with the lowest grades I could get by with my parents, and so no, I had no plans of college afterwards.
Do you feel like it was just a disinterest? Because I'll be honest with you, like I went to college after high school, but I found college way more interesting. Way more might be an exaggeration, but it's because like, okay, I can take classes now based on stuff that I'm interested in versus
Right.
like school. I mean, I'm just going to be real. Like high school, I found incredibly boring because it's like I don't see a real world application of this. Like music was my big goal back then. I wanted to be a
Right.
musician. It was like, okay, how is algebra going to help me with music? Now, in hindsight, it might have actually helped me a little bit. It might have helped both of us a little bit.
Well, I was highly recommended to take pre-algebra my freshman year.
Mm.
Unfortunately, I did. Which forced me to take Algebra 1 my sophomore year, which I barely slid through. Fast forward, after high school, I become a machinist, so my whole life is numbers.
Isn't that ironic?
And the algebra that I absolutely hated, the spatial design, the cylinder volume, now I do every day automatically, sometimes without a calculator.
Isn't that crazy?
So yeah, it's kind of a
I'm
strange...
not trying to get on a soapbox, but think about, and listen, I think my wife's an educator. Like I think educators are some of the most underpaid workers there are out there
Right.
for what they do, and having to
Well,
work
and in
with
today's
kids.
world, the risk and everything else involved.
Absolutely. And so, but I think about like in school, you never equate like, oh, I'm sitting here learning algebra. This could be something I might have to apply in this situation, in this type of field. You know what I'm saying?
I literally made so many jokes about pi r squared in high school.
That's amazing.
And now every day I have to use it pretty much.
Oh, it's like you got
it's like
your
God's
own
sense
ironic.
of humor.
that is amazing. That is amazing.
Plus, the strange part about it is, like a lot of people in life will follow their parents' path.
Mm-hmm.
Like if their dad was a dentist, there's a pretty good chance some of them become a dentist. Or
Sure.
if they were a lawyer, they'll follow the lawyer path. My dad was a machinist.
Really?
Yes. Now, I followed it accidentally because I just signed up to go into maintenance, which 90% or more end up being millwrights, not machinists over there. Because like right now, we only have 4 machinists in the whole place. But so yeah, he was a machinist at Buckeye Automatic there on the edge of MacArthur for pretty much his whole life. And so yeah, and my grandpa on my mom's side was a machinist.
So you're like a third generation machinist.
Yeah.
That's
but
crazy.
Like I said, it just kind of, not by necessarily chosen path, I guess.
You kind of got forced into it.
Well, it just kind of, when they called me to maintenance, they had 10 spots and they had 1 spot left, and it was a machinist. And they said, you can take it or you can wait for the next group to be called if you want a millwright. And I said, well, let me go check out what this is, because I really didn't even know this was going to be an option. So I went to the machine shop, kind of checked it out, and they said, yeah, we work day shift 40 hours a week with weekends off. I said, I'll take it.
Sold.
Because the millwrights work a lot of overtime.
Right.
Pretty much. So so that's how I kind of ended up there.
Well, and how long were you there until you ended up on maintenance?
I started on the Chilpeco side in March of 91. So about 7 years, almost to the month.
Really?
Yeah.
So where were you at as far as life at that point? I mean, were you were you with your wife now, or were you already
No.
having a family?
Let's see. In 91,
Mm-hmm.
I had just been laid off from a plastic factory in Washington Courthouse. Had been laid off for 2 weeks.
And so it sounds like you were kind of just working labor jobs
I was.
as you were able to find them.
Yeah.
Was that what you got into when you got out of high school?
When I graduated high school, I actually was working at Kroger's in MacArthur.
Mm.
And
Listen, if you listening have no idea where MacArthur, Ohio is, we understand.
or that they had a Kroger's.
Yeah, and that does the hotel still, is it still a hotel?
I'm not sure what is. You mean on the corner by the red light?
Like the big.
Yeah, I don't think so.
I just
think
want to go in there
some,
so bad. Google MacArthur Hotel, MacArthur, Ohio Hotel.
But they actually did have a Kroger's many moons
I didn't
ago.
know that. You just blew my mind.
It's where the license bureau is.
Ah, okay.
And the fire station now.
Yeah, MacArthur's like. Is there one light or is there two lights?
One light and a caution light.
Yeah, okay. There we go. So
we always have to include the caution light.
I got you. You don't want to make it too small.
Right.
So, but anyhow, so your first job was Kroger.
Yeah. Besides mowing yards and MacArthur actually had a sundry store also, like Wellston did.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to cut their grass and clean their windows and sweep their sidewalk.
So how did you get that gig? Because that's not like you did that like as a.
The sundry store?
Yeah. Were you actually like an employee, or were you just kind of?
I was like a, I guess, cash paid employee. I didn't even have my driver's license.
We call that under the table back in the day.
Yeah.
So.
I didn't even have a driver's license. I just would go over there.
Was it just a connection you had, or someone your dad?
We shopped there, and I mean, my mom was friends with some of the women that worked there,
Gotcha.
and I think somebody mentioned grass or working or
it's like Ron will be perfect
or needing money. And I said, yeah, I can, so I cleaned windows, swept their sidewalk, mowed their grass.
So you were like holding down like 2 or 3 jobs at one time right out of high school.
Yeah.
So you weren't afraid to work.
No.
That's what you're saying.
No, and I actually quit MacArthur's Kroger's getting like, I don't know, they wouldn't give you over 30 hours a week because they considered you full time if you had that 2 or 3 weeks in a row. So I gave up $1 an hour, I think, to take a 40-hour job at Wellston Sundry Store. After I graduated.
Yeah.
So that's where I was working after I graduated as the only stock boy that unloaded the truck every week and all that. So
dang.
So no, and I mean, honestly, that was a pretty sucky gig. But I still.
Well, yeah, you were the only guy.
I still didn't want to go to college.
Yeah.
And it's you mentioned you went to college like not right out of high school. Is that what you meant?
Yeah. I have to think about it now. Did I go right after? I feel like I took a year off.
Because I ended up continuing to try to get on what was Mead Paper at the time. They used to have 1,000 people wait in line at the
Jackson one?
No, the
Waverly one?
Pickaway Ross Vocational Center.
Oh, okay.
They used to take applications out there every year, and the whole parking lot would have cones and stuff lined.
Wow.
So many people would apply every year. And so I would continue to do that. Well, I ended up trying to get factory jobs. Well, they all wanted factory experience. So using a little bit of my wit one day, I was at a temporary agency in Chillicothe, and the woman said Circle Plastics in Circleville was looking to hire like 30 temporary people, and then at the end of the summer they were going to keep so many. And she said, but they want factory experience. So I looked at her and I said, ma'am, I'm not trying to be a smart aleck or anything. I said, but how am I ever supposed to get factory experience if the first factory won't ever hire me? And she said, you know what, you have a good point. She said, I'm gonna go ahead and send you up there. So I started my factory experience at Circle Plastics in Circleville, which I believe is gone now too. Didn't get hired permanent at the end of that. Didn't want hired permanent at the end of that.
Yeah.
That place was a serious sweatshop. I mean, like 110 to 15 degrees, standing still in there, all 3 shifts. And but that got me a little bit of factory experience. So then I went through probably the better known Tempo Help Incorporated that was over there in Chillicothe, and got a temporary job at Kenworth Truck Company, second shift. And so that got me a little more factory experience. At the time, I wasn't married, didn't have any kids, and call it whatever you want, they wouldn't hire anybody that was young, single, and no kids.
Yeah.
Because they said they wanted people to show up for work on Mondays and Fridays, and I showed up every Monday and Friday, and guys that was married with kids didn't. So.
Oh yeah. No, there is a lot of stereotypes about it, and the tough part is sometimes that can be true, but it's also, like in your example, you were a great employee, but
I was trying to get my foot in the door to get a permanent job at a solid place somewhere, and so then I ended up. That factory experience helped me get on at what was called Calmar Dispensing Systems in Washington Courthouse, another plastic factory. And I ended up being there for almost 2 years. And that's where I was laid off from for 2 weeks when Chilpeco, the small mead side, called me to come to work. And that was in March of 91. And still had no plans. I raced motocross from from the time I was 15. I'd had a dirt bike, I think second or third grade, but I started racing motocross when I was 15, and raced that off and on for 15 years.
I had no idea.
And that was my dream.
Yeah.
Was, to become professional motocross, but that was completely out of the.
I mean, what
question.
was some of the bigger competitions you went and did?
Oh, I did the fair circuits pretty much every year, which went to Pickaway, Jackson County, Vinton County, raced Nelsonville had the Supercross track, which they still have. They have a new one now, but the one I raced at was back by the old drive-in off Old 33. I think they had races just about every weekend, and we'd go over there and race. But no.
What's your craziest injury as a result of motocross?
Craziest injury? None for the first I raced from 15 to 23, 24 probably, and then had a break, and then after a divorce, my buddies had bikes, and I got another bike. All the first run had no injuries, pretty much. The last run, when I was old and brittle, 36 years old, I was racing at a track up above Greenfield. I can't remember the name of it, and was in first place, which I'd never done before in the early days of racing. But video games helped a lot with actually timing over jumps. Seriously. Because I didn't have those in the early, I graduated in 87. I'll be 50.
You'll be 50?
I'll be 50 August 1st.
Ron, so you're doing good.
Not bad.
You're doing good. The beard must be covering all the wrinkles.
Actually, I look younger without it. But
oh, well, never mind. I don't know that.
But up there at that track, I was in the lead. The four-wheelers had just raced the moto before us, which they flat track all the corners really bad and glaze them shiny, and I went off the tabletop into a sweeping corner. I'm assuming third, fourth gear, pretty close to wide open, and the front tire completely washed out with no warning, like ice. And best I still know, when the handlebar dug straight into the ground, my own elbow broke 3 ribs.
Oh my gosh.
from the impact. So there I was, 36 years old, laying on the side of a track with a job, yeah. And
it sounds like it knocked you unconscious too.
No, it didn't knock me unconscious, but I didn't know. It happened so fast, I wasn't sure exactly what happened.
Could you breathe?
No. I was laying on my back, and I couldn't breathe. It had knocked all the wind out of me. And so I had my feet flat and was trying to arch my back, and I had dirt and rocks in my mouth and down my throat. So next thing I know, blood was coming out of my mouth. So my first thought then was punctured lung or whatever, which ended up not being, thank goodness. But did fracture 3 ribs, and
dude, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Did you race after that?
I don't know if I ended up racing after that. I kept the bike for a while.
Just in case.
I don't know. I mean, I didn't go back to racing every weekend at that point anyway, because I did have 2 daughters and stuff by that point. But
you lead me to believe 2 things that I've theorized for a long time. One, video games can help your hand-eye coordination.
They can.
And can translate over the real world. I'm not saying that you should play video games 10 hours a day. Although I did one time and I wrecked a vehicle. So it didn't help my hand-eye coordination.
But I did hear that story about the one boy that had played those fighter games and fighter jets and stuff and ended up landing a plane.
What?
Yeah.
He had no flying experience.
No.
And he did it.
But he had played so many video games that
my brain just exploded.
He landed a plane.
That's amazing.
As long as that was a true story, whoever told me about it, it was supposed to be a true.
I guess you have to consider who the source was.
We'll
let them remain anonymous. But we'll Google it afterwards and verify. Google will tell us the truth. And
I can see that being true.
I could see that being true too. I really could. And then the second theory is I feel like when we're like between teenagers and like 22, 23, I can't verify this for women, but our bones are made of rubber.
Oh yeah.
Because man, I'll tell you what, there's all kinds of stuff my brother and I got into, and I cannot believe I didn't break any more bones.
Right.
I mean, now I've got a lot of dents in my shins from skateboarding, but no breaks.
Yeah.
I still have those dents. So
the weird part about me is I was limber then, but didn't have as much guts as I did at the 35, 36 because.
Is it like midlife crisis
I don't
thing
know.
that we go through?
My bike was much better quality wise though. My suspension had been redone to match my body weight, and
I think that we feel like we're smarter. Like we can, like we know, like say in your case, like you feel more confident. Okay, this is when I need to gun it. This is when I need to lay off. Like this is when I know I need to bear it. Well, like when you're young, it's just dumb testosterone filled determination, right?
Plus, I knew some of the guys I was racing with when I was young, and I knew how crazy they were. So it was, it was a little more iffy then.
That's funny. So you were still doing, you're young, you're single, you just get on at Mead, which is the place you wanted to.
Yeah.
And you end up getting into mechanical work, and you already kind of explained the interest, like what happened with the Bearded Pup. Had you had any kind of like entrepreneurship ideas or things that you thought about getting into before then?
I don't know. Back in my early 20s, I did a little bit of car stereo work on the side for people building. That's when the boom car craze was kind of taking off. I used to build some subwoofer boxes and install stereos and stuff, but that was not in a shop or anything. And then I don't know, once I got laid off at Chilpeco the first time, that would have been in 93, had never golfed in my life. And so I would have been 24 probably, around there somewhere. I'd never golfed. When we got laid off, one of my buddies there said, we need to go golfing, we're not working.
Might as well do something.
So that was the beginning of a bad thing there probably, because I still golf to this day. But I did get into club building and
really,
and stuff on the side.
That's interesting.
But that was a good bit later. The club building, that was actually after I was in the machine shop.
Well,
already
those skills probably help carry over, right?
Yeah, to a degree, measuring the shaft diameters and the heads, and because not all of them are the same, and re-gripping clubs for people, reshafting clubs, all that kind of stuff. But I had to forcibly give that up once the beard business started.
Well, and so
I still have all the equipment, but
do you?
Yeah, I don't.
That's dangerous information.
I don't really do anybody's but my own.
No, there you go. Well, so you said, the whole reason you started the whole Bearded Pup thing, and that's like my beard. I just trimmed it up. People are probably wigging out because the last podcast, I'm pretty certain my beard was a lot bigger. It's just hot.
Yeah.
And I get bored and I shear it off. I'm not allowed to shear all of it off, and my wife loves it. So that's why it's sticking around. And maybe my face is ugly too. I don't know. So, but, you know, you created a product for yourself and then started selling it to your friends, all this. But then you go and do one event and you see like, oh, this could really take off. Like, is that the moment that you're like, I'm really going to put some effort into this? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. It kind of hit me that, you know, at that point, not that it could possibly be my only job in the future,
mm-hmm.
but that, you know, actually me and my wife had this conversation. I said, you know, if it pays for us to go on one nice vacation a year,
Mm-hmm.
that would be great.
Sure.
And now I pretty much almost can't take a vacation
Because you're so busy.
because of, yeah.
I mean, that's a good problem to have, though, right?
It is, but still a problem.
Right, right.
And at this point, which we are, what, 4+ years later, it could very well become my only job.
Yeah. Hey, that's an awesome place to be, man.
So
A really awesome place to be.
yeah,
Kind of scary, probably at the same time.
it is scary, but it's so much more fun. That's weird to say, fun, to work doing something you enjoy. Not that I hate machining,
Sure.
but you are still just a number.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
you know, when you're working for the machine, when you're working for somebody else. Plus, my creative side gets to be unleashed.
Oh yeah.
You know, with my products. Always trying to continue to come out with new stuff, new products.
And we've put like a bunch of stuff out. Like your guys' stuff is the majority of stuff I've ever used on my beard products, as far as like scents and balms and things like that. So, and you said it's been 4 years now this year. So
Yeah.
talk about some of the big ups and downs. You know, has there been a lot of big ups, a lot of big downs as far as running the business and things like that?
I guess some of the ups and downs I almost throw into the same.
They're the same moments.
Yeah, the moments. Not being able to keep up.
Wow.
Like not being able to keep enough product made sometimes of certain things at certain times of the year, especially like if I'm doing events, vendor shows every weekend, which starts pretty much toward the end of August, clear through Christmas.
Wow.
I mean, like right now I am almost booked every weekend.
That's awesome.
From September 1st to Christmas. Some of them's 3 days, some of them's 2 days, some of them's 1 day. But yeah, during that time, sometimes it's treading water to keep stuff caught up. There's been a big debate on social media lately about amongst the beard community about what is small batch companies. Which,
so when you say small batch, like describe that to people who wouldn't know what you're talking about.
Well, that's what the debate is.
Oh.
I have in the last couple weeks, in my own mind, declared myself not small batch. Because I still see that there's companies, and this is not knocking any company or anybody's theory of how they should run their business, but there's still companies that claim to, and I do believe, make your product to order. If I made everybody's product to order, I wouldn't sleep the 4 hours that I get a night right now.
Yeah.
So if in the grand scheme of things, I'm definitely small batch if you're comparing me to Cremo.
Right.
That's on every Walmart shelf, that is factory made. I don't even know if human hands touch it. But compared to them, I'm small batch. Compared to the guy that makes 4 beard balms at a time or 10 beard balms at a time, I'm probably a large batch if that's so.
Right.
I don't know. The debate on social media amongst the beard community was the small batch thing, and I didn't really get involved in the conversations too much. I was just thinking to myself about what all was being said, and came to the conclusion that most of the time my beard balms are made in a batch of 50 to 51.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it varies depending on how much scent goes in, how much
Sure.
whatever. I extremely tight on my tolerances of like every ingredient is always exactly the same.
Yeah.
I have had a few people tell me that mine versus other brands that they have tried, that mine does seem more consistent.
Mm-hmm.
Like the beard balm consistency, the hold, the scent strength.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I'm really picky anyway, and I'm just as picky about the stuff that's not going on me to other people as what I take myself. So, yeah, the small batch thing, I don't really care what people say the Bearded Pup are.
Right.
You know, I don't. If they want to say we're small batch, that's up to them. If they want to say we're large batch, if they want to say we're manufactured, I welcome them to to come and watch me manually pour every bottle of oil and every jar of beard balm.
Come and find out.
Yeah, and label each one by hand.
Maybe we'll put them to some volunteer work.
Yeah,
if they're open to it. So what do you feel like if you're going to talk to the people out there that are thinking about trying their own thing, or like have gotten like a crazy idea, or like a pivotal moment where maybe they started doing something and they saw a moment where, oh, this could maybe be something. Like, what would be your advice? What would be, the thing that you would sit down and tell them in retrospect to what you've been through, and now you're at the point where you could foreseeably see this turning into something that is going to be your full-time gig?
The one sentence answer to that would be prepared to work.
Yeah.
That's and I'm gonna be the first to say I have never been an overachiever. I mean, I've never been someone that necessarily just went out of their way to work. I would work. I would give an honest work for an honest wage, and whatever. But I didn't like go looking for extra work. Once you start a business of your own, you don't have time off. I mean, there's no days off really. There's no like I said, me and my wife did just take a 4-day vacation to Florida, and when I got home, I've been jammed up for 3 days.
Yeah.
And the whole time we were on vacation, I tried to relax and have a good time, but in the back of my mind, I also had a list waiting on me of stuff that needed done and orders that needed filled that came in while we were gone. So, be prepared to work, if you want to succeed anyway. If you want to do something as a hobby and you're calling it a business, there is such a thing. There's people that have side businesses that are a hobby. They're probably never going to do that for full time. So, and like I said, I'm not there yet.
Yeah.
And I bust my butt, and I put in countless hours. And people say, do you pay yourself? I don't even know how you would do that, because
right.
If I kept track of my hours, I'm going to sue the Bearded Pup for negligence.
That's amazing.
But when you enjoy what you do, and when you have people come back to you 6 months later, a month later, a year later, and tell you, there's a guy right here in our state that came to me. I was at Lucasville Trade Days and set up as a vendor. And he came to me, and I could see he had let whiskers grow for maybe a couple weeks, but he had really bad skin. Well, as he stood there and talked to me, he told me he had psoriasis, and wanted to know if I thought the oils that I carried at the time would possibly break him out or make it worse, or or whatever. And I told him, I said, I only use pure organic carrier oils and everything. And at the time, I had my unscented beard balm and beard oil with me. And so that's what I ended up recommending him, just in case any of the fragrance or essential oils or anything would be an irritant to him. So he bought the unscented beard oil. And I don't know, it was probably within a month and a half, 2 months, I ended up getting a website order from him. And he told me, he said, I don't know what it is, he said, but in the process of heading toward a beard, because of the shaving irritating the psoriasis, and then finding you, he said, your unscented beard oil has basically taken away all the symptoms of my psoriasis.
Wow.
So he can have a beard, he can kind of not have a beard, but since then I'm guessing, places a regular order probably every 3 to 4 months online.
That's awesome.
And swears by, and buys scented stuff now because, you know, he tested the waters and it didn't treat him any different than the unscented. So, but we have numerous people come back to us and tell us that, you know, their skin isn't dry, there's not having beard drift, which is in the beard world is beard dandruff.
Oh yeah. And when it gets bad, it gets bad.
My balm is easy to melt down into a clear oil-like state, but there's enough beeswax and shea butter in it that it still gives you some shapeability and control without being hard or whatever. Helps guys control their stray whiskers and curls, and their wives are much happier because it's softer, it smells better, more manageable.
Yeah.
So when you get good feedback, it definitely erases the 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning finish ups in the shop, and the clock goes off at 5:45 for your quote real job. And there you've been in bed for 3 hours or 2.5 hours or whatever. So yeah, the positive feedback definitely is, I guess, kind of pay.
Yeah. It's like
helps,
a bonus.
That helps keep you going. Yeah.
No, that's awesome, Ron. And
So
I'll tell you, a big part of this podcast is like kind of boiling down what things that we've walked through as people, you know, whether it's positive, negative, whatever it is, and how it's kind of helped shape who we are and some of the successes we've seen. And I feel like for you, the thing I heard, and I feel like you summed it up, is one, not being afraid to work and work hard. And I think like even you just talking about like some of the situations you've ended in and the different labor jobs you've looked for and that you haven't, you know, whenever it went from one, you know, you were like, all right, I need to figure something else out.
yeah.
And then even once this started, not being afraid to say, all right, well, I got to keep putting food on the table, but let's see what this could turn into. And now working all the hours you work now, and it potentially looking at turning into something that you're doing full time. And maybe at that point, a couple of months after you've, you know, if you cross that bridge and dive full on, maybe we'll sit down and talk, you know, another 3-6 months into it and say, all right, buddy, how's it doing? How's the waters on this side, you know? So,
well, people always say, and I've heard this my whole life, and lots since I've started this business, is that sometimes people are forced into the going full time. Others choose to, but almost all of them say that it's the best move they ever made. Especially the people that have been forced into it, like lost their employment or their place of employment closed or right-sized them or whatever. They're the ones, if they already had a business going, generally they come by and they say, getting fired or getting my job cut was the best thing that ever happened to me because the stress level was so much less. I'm making it, doing what I love to do now. So those kind of stories are enticing, but on the other hand, like you said, I do want to make sure I keep food on the table.
oh yeah.
And do I think I could quit my job tomorrow and make it with this? 100% yes.
Mm.
Do I want to quit my job tomorrow and live a lesser lifestyle by going full time with this? No, I don't want to. So I'm trying to wait until I have everything situated and all my ducks in a row financially, especially, so that when I do make the move, there's a freedom involved that I'm not going to be freaking out 24 hours a day.
Sure.
Wanting to know if I'm going to have to steal my dog's food out of the container.
That's probably good.
That I can go to Kroger's and pay $20 for.
Oh yeah.
Some lunch meat and a bag of buns and
Exactly.
still be okay.
Not eating canned dog food.
Yeah.
Well, Ron, listen, it's been great sitting down with you, man. Thanks so much for being on the podcast.
I appreciate you having me. This is pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely, man. Thanks again.